How will the Chicago Bears offense look in 2020? What's up, guys? I'm back with another Bears offseason prediction video. I thought I'd do a little prediction on how the Bears offensive stats are going to look this year, since I saw a lot of people were actually asking me about that. So pretty much in this video, guys, I'm going to go player by player, offensive group by offensive group, and kind of predict, the stats and how each player on offense is actually going to do. I'm only going to be covering the basic stats in this video to keep the video a little bit shorter. Like, I don't want this video to be like an hour long, so I'm pretty much only going to cover like the yards and touchdowns for most of the players. Obviously for quarterbacks, it's going to be interceptions and passer ratings as well. But yeah, it's going to be a pretty basic video regardless. I'll just give you guys my thoughts on how I think each player is going to do. If they're going to take a step upwards next year, if they're going to take a step backwards, how our offense is going to look overall. And guys, before I even start this video, I have to say that all you Bears fans that saw 2019, you know how absolutely disgusting this offense was. I mean, it was absolutely pathetic, horrendous, torturous to watch, for lack of a better word, because we literally could not get anything going whatsoever pretty much the entire season, okay? Save for a few games, like maybe the Cowboys game and some of the Lions games, man. We had no sustained drives, no explosive plays, no fun at all, and it was just so horrible to watch. Now, the Chicago Bears did take that situation seriously to some extent over the offseason, because we did make a lot of key acquisitions on offense, not just in the personnel, but also with the coaching staff as well. Obviously getting, respected veteran head coaches, like, not head coaches, but assistant coaches like Juan Castillo, Clancy Barone for the tight ends. Like, we got some older people in here that have some experience in this league. And with the players, we did get, obviously, a brand new tight end group. So all the tight ends that we had last year, for the most part, they're not going to be here this year. Our top three are going to be completely different. Jimmy Graham, Cole Kmet, Demetrius Harris. For the receivers, we did add a couple as well. Some speedsters like Darnell Mooney, Ted Ginn. We did add a Super Bowl MVP winning quarterback, Nick Foles, who, although he hasn't had that much success in the regular season, he has dominated in the playoffs and shown in spurts that he can be a pretty good QB. So If Mitch Trubisky doesn't work out, I mean, we have another quarterback now, which is absolutely huge. But yeah, those are the main acquisitions we got. I also want to actually talk about John DeFilippo too. I mean, the QB coach we got came from the Jaguars recently, but he had a lot of success with the Philadelphia Eagles, developing obviously Nick Foles and Carson Wentz there. So he's a pretty good QB coach. Hopefully he can get through to the QBs. And even though we're not changing anything in regards to the running backs, Cordarrelle Patterson is also working out with the running backs now. So that could be another option we have at RB. Maybe like a depth back, or maybe like a change of pace back. So our offense is going to look a lot different than what it was last year. Let's just hope it's different enough to avoid the same outcome we had last year, okay? This year, all we really need out of our offense is average. Like, that should be the goal for our team right now, for our offense, that is. Be average, because the defense is going to carry you to victories like it always has. But you got to give them something to work with, okay? You can't be worse in the NFL. You can't be bottom 5, whatever we were last year. I think we were we were the 29th ranked offense based on yards. We had 4,749. And based on touchdowns, we were the 26th offense. We only had 30. So just our passing offense, our rushing offense, it was absolutely god-awful, and it prevented us from making the playoffs last year. Last year, we would have been a playoff team easily with even an average offense. So guys, really all I am asking for from this offense this year is to be average, okay? Obviously, I'm hoping they're trying to be the best they possibly can be. Hopefully, they're trying to be like a top 5 offense in the NFL, because that's what the players' mindset should be. But as a fan base, just watching this game, kind of going based on what's likely, it's not likely at all we go from a bottom 5 offense to a top 5 offense just overnight, just in one offseason, when we really did not make, a crazy amount of acquisitions either. So that's probably not going to happen, but I do believe we can be at least average. The talent we have on this offense now, with the number 1 star wide receiver in Al Robinson, who took a massive step upwards last year, some young talent like Anthony Miller, speedsters like Darnell Mooney, Ted Ginn, we also have Ridley, who we have barely used at all, and Javon Wims as well. Some pretty decent running backs in Tarik, Cohen, and David Montgomery. Tarik Cohen is more of a receiving back, but if he can get back to 2018 levels, he is a dominant threat on this offense, a complete X factor. And David Montgomery behind a decent O-line, he could be pretty scary as well. I'm definitely concerned about the O-line still because I don't think we made enough acquisitions over the offseason. But we did get Juan Castillo, who's going to be a huge add. He has had so much success developing star O-linemen in this league and just doing quick turnarounds as well. I mean, he's had a top 10 run game pretty much everywhere he has gone. So I have a lot of faith in Castillo. Hopefully he can get this offensive line to be playing like it did in 2018 when Charles Leno was a Pro Bowler. Cody Whitehair was playing pretty well too. But guys, the talent on this team is good enough to be average, okay? It's not good enough, in my opinion, to be top 5 or top 10 because I'm still also concerned about the quarterbacks, how they're going to play. But they can be average with this level of talent on offense. And that's pretty much all we need for a Super Bowl. So with all that said, let me give you guys my official predictions for the 2020 Chicago Bears offense. First up, let's start with the quarterbacks, the most important position on this entire team. If we get the quarterbacks right, the rest of our team is going to have success as well. But guys, since we have a quarterback competition right now, since I really do not know who's actually going to be starting this year, you know, I'm obviously rooting for Mitch. A lot of people think it's going to be Foles as well. Like, really, any QB could start. So I'm not going to predict stats individually for them. I'm going to predict stats for the QBs as a whole, okay? So throughout the entire season, whatever QB starts, whoever it is, if it's Mitch or if it's Foles or if it's a combination of both, I predict these stats for the QBs total. So for the QBs, I'm predicting 3,800 passing yards, 26 passing touchdowns, 12 interceptions, and a 90 passer rating. I know already a lot of you guys are going to be coming at me in the comments saying, how is this possible, man? There's no way Trubisky or Foles could do this ever, right? Well, first of all, Trubisky did do this in 2018, okay? He had pretty much the same stats in 2018 to what I'm predicting right here. So I'm not predicting like a massive step up from Trubisky at all. But I am predicting he can get back to 2018 levels and be at least an average quarterback if he actually wins this job. If Nick Foles wins this job, then I think he can have pretty similar stats as well. Maybe even better stats, you know, obviously if we get the Super Bowl MVP Nick Foles, but Nick Foles has not played at that level for an entire season. So I don't think Foles, if he starts, he would have like a dominant, crazy year. He would probably have some games where he just absolutely went off and some games where he probably was not that good. But overall, I do think he can be at least an average quarterback in this offense, an offense that is designed for a QB like him. If you ask me what's likely, you know, who actually starts, I think it's going to be both quarterbacks this year. So there's a good percent chance both Mitch and Foles are going to play because both have not stayed healthy for a 16-game season, especially Nick Foles. He's only played 13 games at the most, which was 7 years ago. So Foles doesn't really have a lot of experience playing a full season. Trubisky has gotten hurt in the past too. There's also a good chance that Trubisky could get pulled if he plays bad because the leash is pretty tight on him. So it's going to be a combination of both quarterbacks, but whoever it is, guys, I think they can be average this year with the talent that we have on offense. Next up, let's go to the receivers. I'm going to start out with Allen Robinson, the number one receiver in this offense, the biggest superstar we probably have on offense. I am predicting him to get 1,200 yards this year and 7 touchdowns. So pretty much a slight improvement over what he had last year. Now, I do get the argument that with a lot more talent on this offense, with a better quarterback, you know, Allen Robinson could go absolutely berserk. Okay, he could have 1,300 yards, maybe even more. He could be, you know, close to being top in the league in receiving yards and in touchdowns because he's done this in the past, okay, with Blake Bortles too. So if we get this offense going with a good QB, with a lot of weapons around him, he could dominate. But Matt Nagy's offense, guys, if it's actually working properly, all the targets should not be going to Allen Robinson. That's why I only have him getting, you know, slight improvements over last year. Okay, we're not going to see crazy numbers from him if our offense is actually operating well because Matt Nagy's offense loves to get everybody involved. They love to get the tight ends involved. They love to get the running backs involved in the receiving game. Obviously, all the receivers too. Now, we have not seen that yet because Matt Nagy's offense has not been the same offense it was in Kansas City. Like, we don't even have the talent to run that same type of offense. But if we can even get something similar, something close to that level, you know, all the targets are not going to be going to him, but a lot of them still will because he is clearly Mitch Trubisky's favorite target. I think he could be a favorite target of Nick Foles as well. I'm predicting that for Allen Robinson, another really solid season. Stop sleeping on A-Rob, man, and we should extend him first. Also, please do that soon, Chicago Bears. But let's move on to Anthony Miller now, guys. The number 2 receiving option on this team, most likely. He's going to be playing in the slot. He's going to be all over the field. he is that all-around type of receiver that can really do it all when he is at his best, okay? And we have not seen Anthony Miller at his best yet, okay? We've seen him in spurts be great. Like the last half of 2018, he was pretty good. The last half of 2019, he was pretty good. For 2018, he was really good in the red zone all year. But we still have not seen that breakout season from him based on the talent that he had coming from Memphis. Okay, we have not seen his full potential yet. But I am predicting, guys, this year, Anthony Miller is going to get up to 850 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns. So pretty much a 200-yard improvement over last year and way more touchdowns as well, getting more involved in the red zone. Now, would this qualify as a breakout year? Maybe, maybe not, depending on how you look at it. I know a lot of people want Anthony Miller to get at least 1,000 yards. That would be a true breakout year, but that's going to be extremely hard to make it happen in this offense unless our quarterbacks just absolutely go off. But if we do have average quarterback play, if we can get the deep balls going to Anthony Miller, which Trubisky has missed a lot in the past couple years, his stats are going to be a lot better, and he has the talent, to be the number 2 receiving option on this team, and a pretty good one at that. So that's my prediction for Anthony Miller. The next highest receiver, you're going to be a little bit surprised, I actually have being Tarik Cohen, okay? Tarik Cohen I have getting 500 yards and 2 touchdowns. Everybody knows what the story was with Tarik Cohen last year. He struggled mightily with drops. His hands were pretty much bricks. He couldn't really catch the football. He was top 5 in drops in the entire NFL. His rushing game was not that good either, okay? He was running out of bounds a lot. But right now I'm talking about the receiving game. He was not the best option in the receiving game based on consistency, and he was not the same receiving back we saw in 2018. Now, a lot of that maybe also has to do to the fact that our quarterback play was so bad, our offensive line play was so bad that maybe, our receivers just did not anticipate getting the ball actually in their hands. So that kind of messes with your mind somehow, but that's also not an excuse for his poor play last year. Now, Tarik Cohen, though, has really taken the situation seriously. He's bulked up in the offseason. He's been working on his hands a lot. I've been seeing him post workout videos with the jug machines, catching balls pretty much every single day. And knowing the type of mentality that Tarik Cohen has, he is going to be a man on a mission this year, guys, because everybody is counting him out again. And when you count out the underdog, that's a dangerous thing to do. So I do think he can get back to 2018 levels partially. Okay, not the same receiving stats he had in 2018. That was completely crazy. He had like 700-something yards that year. But 500 yards he can do in this offense if it is functioning fully. Okay, with Nick Foles or with Trubisky, if we have a decent passing attack going, Tarik Cohen is going to be a big part of it. The next highest receiving option I have behind Tarik Cohen is Jimmy Graham. Okay, we paid Jimmy Graham a lot of money. In my opinion, he was overpaid based on his production, based on his age at this point in his career. But the Bears were desperate to find a decent tight end, at least better than what we had last year. And we did get that in Jimmy Graham. So Jimmy Graham overall, okay, is going to be playing the U tight end role. He's going to be active in the red zone. He's going to be a capable pass catcher too, hopefully. Probably not one of our main options, but he's going to get a decent amount of yards just based on the fact that he's going to be Trubisky's security blanket. He's going to be there when Trubisky needs somebody to dump the ball off to in the middle of the field. So Jimmy Graham, guys, I think he can have, 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. That's not crazy. That's not really an amazing stat line for tight ends, but I also feel like with the double tight end sets that we're going to have, sometimes 3 tight ends as well, we're not going to have all the receiving stats going to just one tight end. So it's going to be split mostly between Jimmy Graham and Kmet, but Jimmy Graham, in my opinion, is going to get 400 of them, which is a little bit less than what he got with the Green Bay Packers last year, but that would still be a decent amount for our tight ends since we have not had any production from them over the past 2 years. After Jimmy Graham, the next highest receiver I have on this team is going to be sophomore wide receiver Riley Ridley. Riley Ridley has seldom played on this team. He only played a couple snaps last year. He did have a really clutch 4th down catch against the Vikings in the last game of the season, so he did show us something, but, we did not really see him on the field, but I think that's going to change in the offense this year. Riley Ridley, the route running he possesses, guys, watch his college tape from Georgia, man. It was beautiful. It was ridiculously good. Like, he was one of the top receivers in the entire country when it came to route running. Now, we have not seen that on the Bears yet, but we could definitely see that this year if Matt Nagy wants to get this guy involved. He's going to have to win the battle in training camp. He's obviously not even guaranteed to make the roster yet, but based on the crazy amount of talent I saw in college from him, I do think he's capable of maybe even becoming the number 2 option on this team if he had a crazy breakout year, but I'm not going to predict that. I'm going to predict something small from him at first. Only, 350 yards and 2 touchdowns, which would still be a pretty solid year. After Ridley, let's move to my boy Kmet, okay, the tight end we drafted in the second round, our first pick from the 2019 draft. Okay, he's a local Chicago kid. A lot of people here are really excited to see him play in this offense, and he was by far the most NFL-ready tight end in the entire draft class, okay? So he was probably the best option at tight end for the Chicago Bears to get, and I think he's going to have a pretty solid season. I'm predicting him to get 300 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns. You may think that's not really that much, like that's not really a good season, but for a rookie tight end, that would be a pretty decent year because rookie tight ends usually do not get involved that much in the receiving game. A lot of times used mostly as a blocker, which Kmet being the wide tight end, he is going to be mainly a blocker in his first season, but he should be active also here and there in the receiving game. He could also be Trubisky's security blanket. He could also be a down-the-field threat because he possesses, pretty good hands. His run after the catch, his stiff arms, his moves he can put on people, like, they were pretty decent in college. And he played some pretty decent competition too. So, Kmet, guys, I think he's going to have a pretty solid season. Nothing crazy, but 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, that would be a solid rookie year from our tight end. After Kmet, I don't have any more individual stat predictions I'm giving, but for the rest of the receivers we have, I'm predicting 200 more yards and 2 touchdowns. So whether that's between Darnell Mooney or Ted Ginn or Javon Wims or whoever else is on the roster, I think the rest are going to get about 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now you may be wondering why I don't have any predictions for Ted Ginn or Darnell Mooney, who are going to be like our big play threats this year. A lot of people are really excited about them. But guys, I just think that they're only kind of one-dimensional so far, okay? They're only going to be that down the field, take the top off of your defense type of threat. They can't really be used every single down, being all over the field. Like, they're kind of one-dimensional, so they're not going to be necessarily putting up crazy stats. Now, maybe Darnell Mooney could because he did dominate in college, and we don't know what he's going to be like in the NFL yet, as opposed to Ted Ginn, who's been in the NFL for a long time, and he's mostly only been, a big play down the field threat. We don't know that about Darnell Mooney yet, but based on his physical attributes, based on the tape I saw in college, it seems like in the NFL he would be best suited to be just that down-the-field threat guy as of right now. So that's what I'm predicting for the rest of the receivers, 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. Alright, so that should add up to 3,800 receiving yards, so we are done with all the receiving yards. Let's now move on to the rushing yard predictions, which, let's begin, obviously, with our number 1 featured back, David Montgomery. Okay, he's going to be coming off a pretty solid rookie season where he had pretty much no help around him. The offensive line was disgusting in run blocking. It's been horrible the past 2 years, really, in run blocking. So he really had no holes to run through, no solid running attack. The play calling was pretty poor as well in regards to giving the running backs the football. So David Montgomery, despite all that, he still had almost 900 yards and 6 touchdowns, so a pretty solid rookie year. But next season, guys, if our offensive line can be a little bit more improved with Juan Castillo in here, okay, if he can develop the type of running games that he has in the past, David Montgomery is going to go off. I'm not predicting him to be like a top 5 back or anything. Maybe he doesn't have the talent to be like a top 5 back ever, but he can be a top 10 one with at least an average offensive line and better play calling, and with Matt Nagy giving him the ball in better situations. So I'm predicting David Montgomery to have 1,100 rushing yards and 8 touchdowns, which would be a pretty great year from our number 1 back. Let's move on then to our number 2 back, Tarik Cohen, who's mainly going to be a receiving back. I already talked about how bad he was last year, so I'm not going to do that too much. But guys, pretty much in the rushing game, okay, he was horrible with going out of bounds way too early, shying away from contact, not going north to south, just going side to side too much and losing yards. So if he can clean up these things a little bit, if again our offensive line could be a little bit more improved than what it was last year, maybe not a little bit, like a decent amount improved, if they can be at least average, Tarik Cohen could be back to his 2018 levels in regards to rushing. So in 2018, he had about 450 yards rushing. I think this year he can get around 300 with 2 touchdowns as well. Now, that's not exactly what he had in 2018. It's a significant amount less, but based on his role in the offense this year, I think even getting 300 rushing yards would be a pretty decent amount, and it would be good enough for our offense. Because I have him also getting 500 receiving yards, so just getting 300 on the ground will be pretty nice based on the season I have David Montgomery having. Tarik Cohen pretty much just has to be that change of pace back every once in a while to keep the defense on their toes, and hopefully he can have a better season than what he had last year. So 300 rushing yards for Tarik Cohen. After that, the next highest rusher I have is going to be quarterback Mitchell Trubisky. This is only if he starts the entire season. If he does not, obviously just take away these rushing stats from the board because Nick Foles is definitely not going to get any rushing yards at all. But for Mitch Trubisky, I have him getting 250 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground as well. Guys, Mitch Trubisky has a lot of talent as a runner in this league. I mean, we saw in 2018, our offense had a lot of success with Mitch Trubisky running the football. Even in 2019, when Trubisky finally took off in the Cowboys game, when he had a decent amount of rushing yards, that's when our offense was the best. This offense does function the best when Mitch Trubisky is out of the pocket and running the football. Now, I hope Matt Nagy understands that fully and designs plays to get Mitch Trubisky running out of the pocket, designing QB runs for him. And if he does, Trubisky could easily get 250 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. Like, that's the very minimum on what he can do with the ball in his hands on the ground. I think he has the potential even to get up to like 500 rushing yards, but that would require obviously pretty good blocking, pretty good play calling from Matt Nagy, and obviously more of an emphasis on getting Trubisky to run the football, which I'm still not completely confident is going to happen. So that's why I only have him getting 250. And I also don't know if Trubisky is even going to start this year. So that's why the numbers are kind of low. But guys, Trubisky has a lot of potential running the football. So don't sleep on Trubisky as a runner. I think he can be a phenomenal option if we actually gave him the football on the ground. But finally, the last rushing yard prediction I have is going to be for Cordarrelle Patterson. Okay, so just recently it was announced that Cordarrelle Patterson is studying with the RBs. He's going to be used mainly as a running back this year, most likely. And if that is the case, guys, I'm predicting him to get 200 rushing yards the entire season, which would be more than he's ever gotten before. Actually, I believe with the Patriots, he might have gotten over 200, so it would be close to what he had with the Pats. But if he can get anything like that, man, that would be a pretty amazing year from Patterson, because we saw in the past, guys, in the Broncos game and some of the other games, I think the Cowboys game as well, when Cordarrelle Patterson has the ball in his hands, he can be a pretty dynamic weapon, okay? He's kind of one-dimensional, though. He's not an all-around back. He can't make the same cuts that David Montgomery can, so don't expect him to ever take the number 1 back role, most likely. But just being third on the depth chart, he can do a solid amount of damage, and just getting 200 yards, man, it would be pretty great for this offense. So that's what I'm predicting for Cordarrelle Patterson. So there you have it, guys. Those are all my predictions. So just to sum it all up, for the entire offense combined, I have us getting 5,650 total yards, all-purpose yards, which would have ranked 15th in the NFL last year. And for total touchdowns, I have us getting 38, which would have ranked 18th in the NFL last year. What you can take away from this video is that I think the Chicago Bears are going to be an average to slightly below average offense this season. I think all the acquisitions we made in the personnel department, with some of the players, with some big ones like Nick Foles, obviously a quarterback change, or completely revamping the tight ends, like, it's going to make some type of difference this year, and we're not going to be as bad as we were last year. I know a lot of people in the comments are going to come at me for saying that, but guys, again, I'm not predicting anything crazy at all, okay? I'm not thinking we're going to become a top 5 offense or even a top 10 offense, but I think being average is definitely possible with the personnel that we have. Now, obviously, I'm hoping for Trubisky to have a breakout year. I'm hoping for this offense to be best in the NFL, but going based on last year, going based on just being, bias-free, that's probably not going to happen, okay? Just looking at it from an objective point of view, we are probably not going to be anywhere close to a top offense in the NFL, not even near top 10, but we can be middle of the NFL, maybe slightly below, and that should be good enough, guys, to go to the playoffs and maybe go on a Super Bowl run. So that is all my predictions, guys. Let me know what you think about it in the comments down below, but as always, bear down.